This podcast contains content that may be disturbing to some audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I am like 10 out of 10 excited today because
Me too.
we are about to interview one of the co-hosts of probably my favorite paranormal show. Kindred Spirits is actually one of the shows that I binge watched in my infamous foot-breaking accidentally learned I'm a medium story.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Slipped on milk and realized I can talk to dead people. Thanks to Kindred Spirits.
It is my absolute favorite paranormal show, and we'll go into that as to why it is. But I'm so excited.
I love having the chance to talk to other investigators. So I can't wait. Let's bring him on.
Hi.
Hi, Adam.
Hi. How are you?
Okay, I just did my fangirl moment. I'll calm down now. Okay.
Listen, no pressure. I'm fangirl all the time about other people, so I say let it flow. It'll be more exciting.
It is more exciting. Life is better when you're fangirling.
Exactly. Always. Because of the name of your podcast, I wore my new shirt that says I'm a morning person.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Right? Because I think it matches. Yeah, I think it matches pretty well with the title of your podcast. So
that is awesome. I love it.
Also, this is completely unrelated, but may I ask who is in the portrait behind you?
That's a good. So we think it might be the wife of Henry Hinchy, which is a famous Provincetown, famous artist.
Oh.
I think it's Ada Rayner, I believe. Ben was working at a coffee shop in Provincetown, and this old man would come in every morning at the same time and get his coffee. And then one day he walked in with his painting and was like, "You should have it." It's unsigned, but I love her look. It's almost like she's sort of looking out for us. And
yeah, I feel like she's looking into my soul, but not in a creepy way.
No, I think she's there. She's like everyone's grandmother she's like, I'm everyone's grandmother. I don't know. Sometimes I change out the art based on what we're doing. And I was like, you know what? That seems appropriate. So
it does. It's perfect.
Well, you know what? I love her vibe. I feel like
she's
here for this conversation.
She's going to whisper in my ear occasionally. And I'm going to be like, oh, yep.
This is what you should say, Adam.
Exactly. And I'll be like, yes.
Oh, yes, please.
So most of our guests know you from the famous show Kindred Spirits and Ghost Hunters. You are the winner of Ghost Academy. Ghost Hunters Academy, for sure. And that's what landed you your spot on Ghost Hunters, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if I went into depth in the book, but I say I was at home with Ben watching Ghost Hunters, eating hamburger helper stroganoff. Anyone?
I just had that for dinner last night.
I'm telling you. So it was like 2010 or 9. And it said, "Do you think you have what it takes to be a ghost hunter?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And so I went down to the internet cafe, 2009, and I filled out the form online and gave him my picture and talked about my Gettysburg experience. And about a year and a half later, I got a call that said, "We want you on the second cycle of Ghost Hunters Academy." So it was a competition reality show where they took 8 cadets and they put them in the most haunted places in the country. And it was, they would technically vote someone off the island every episode, right? And I made it to the end. And I won that show. It was me, Michelle Tate, and Eric Baldino right at the end, and I won. And I always say that my prize, technically was like 6 episodes of Ghost Hunters, which I didn't know there was a cap on it. But it was 6 episodes of Ghost Hunters. But when I showed up and Amy and I got paired together, it was sort of like this match made in ghost heaven. And so our chemistry was really good, and the network was noticing it, and the team was noticing it. And I never left. I mean, I stayed on for 3.5 seasons and almost 4 seasons. And it wasn't until after that I looked back at that contract and I was like, what did it actually say? And it was like 6 episodes. And I was like, well, I got bonus points. Yeah. Oh, tripled. Probably 120 something episodes.
Oh, wow.
I was on. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to think about. Like, it was such a not a short period of time, I'm just like, I mean, 4 years is a long time, but also it's been so long since, like, I think 2014 was the last time we filmed. The end of 2014 was the last time we aired a Ghost Hunters episode. So it's been 10 years, technically. Mm-hmm. And in that time, Amy and I got to do Kindred Spirits. We both have books. We're all working on new things. So it's crazy how time flies, and January is already gone. So I don't know what's happening.
Well, it paid off because you and Amy work so well together. And speaking of books,
yes,
Adam. Look, I have your autograph. I pre-ordered it the second I found out about it, and I've read it, and it's fantastic.
Thank you. And those little that little book plate that you have that I signed.
Taped it in there. Uh-huh.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I literally did sign every single one of those, and then Ben, myself, and my two friends, we packed those in envelopes, stamped them, addressed them, mailed them ourselves. So that has many people's DNA all over it.
That's so cool. I love that your husband is so involved with all of it too, because and I know he's into the paranormal according to your book.
Yeah.
We started a group, right?
Yeah, well, he and I, we lived in Provincetown. Well, we still do. We live on the Cape. We moved to Truro, which is like one town over, and we lived in Provincetown for like 20 years. And in the winter, as it is now, it's really quiet. Like, your activities include going to the post office and going to the grocery store. I mean, that's pretty much the thing that you're going to do all day, especially in the winter, because it's a summer town. And at that point, back in 2007, 8, 9. We worked our tail off all summer long. And then it was very part-time in the winter because it's a summer community. And we would spend that time looking for ghosts. I mean, doing our hobbies. We'd watch scary movies. We would, make good dinners, hamburger helper stroganoff. We would make, right. We were doing something that we like to do, a hobby with our friends. And we would go to our friends' houses that they were house sitting. Like, this doesn't happen anymore on the Cape, but it was a time when somebody would say, instead of, draining the pipes, I'm going to allow you to stay here if you pay the utilities, and keep watch over the house. Right. It's very, almost like Shining, like the whole town turns into Shining, like little caretakers everywhere. But we would get access to these houses that were built, in the early 1800s, and they had stories and captains' houses. And so we would go and sit with recorders and just see if we could connect with anything on the other side, anyone on the other side, really. But yeah, I'm glad he likes it. Otherwise, he'd be really upset when I bring home a spooky artifact. He brought home this painting, and I was like, "That's creepy enough." But I have we collect a lot of things, and he seems to be okay with it as long as he's cool. If it moves in the middle of the night, I'm going to kill it with fire.
It's out.
It's going.
I will kill it with fire.
I will kill it with fire if it moves at all.
Boundaries are important. No, I love that. I love that you guys bonded over that. I also love food and scary movies, but that's really sweet that it's part of your relationship, because I know that for a lot of people, it can be a strain when your partner isn't supportive of the work that you do.
My husband hates the spooky, but he's very supportive. He bought me all this weird stuff behind me. So
see that it works out. I feel like I love talking. I love doing what we do, especially, expanding the idea of what paranormal investigation can be, and what we're really doing when we're looking for ghosts, and the ideas behind it, and what is a ghost. But I love that we can do that year round, and it seems to be okay for the most part. People are like, "Oh, cool," right? We're into it, because everybody gets into it in the fall. Everyone in the fall is
right,
all in, right? And I'm like, welcome to our 24/7, I'm like, welcome to a day in the life. But yeah, no, I think our fans are great. And the people that want to have conversations about certain topics, especially ones in the book.
And speaking of your book, I loved it. And I feel like it's such a good thing for people who might be struggling with a loss. Why was it important for you to write this book?
I had been thinking about this idea for quite a while. just getting it on paper, basically. Like, I don't know if anybody believes in zodiac signs and anxiety, but I'm a Pisces and I have anxiety. And like, I
know about anxiety. I'll tell you that.
Right. And I have lots of thoughts in my head. Right. And sometimes, those thoughts can get the best of you. And the best way for me to process those is to like write them down or like come up with something that kind of fleshes out that idea. And so when I was thinking about writing a book per se a few years ago, I didn't just want to write an ordinary ghost book, meaning I didn't just want it to have a collection of, how-to stories, how to investigate. Like, and those are fine. Those are absolutely fine. Right. But I feel like everybody's done that. Everybody who is smarter than I, in a way has done that book. Like, people have written those books. And so for me, I said, what about what we know from the other side to better help us understand our own grief, our own loss, our own mortality? Can those ideas help us in understanding the hardest part of this journey, this life journey that we're going on? And when I started thinking about those ideas, it made sense to me. Don't get me wrong. It does have really great true stories. The book does talk about some of our cases and like explores them a bit deeper. The overall idea was to help the living understand the dead by in turn helping the dead understand themselves. I don't know. Hopefully a ghost will pick up the book. It's a layered thing. And when I started writing it, it was tough. It was very tough because you're thinking about, death and what is that all the time, especially when you're diving into something that you're writing, like a manuscript or chapters, and you have to really meditate on like, well, what was that experience like? How do I process that? And at times it was pretty anxiety inducing because you're cracking open something that as humans, we work so hard to shut out. Right. We're the only species. I don't know if we're the only species, but we're a species that knows it's coming. Right.
It's one thing you can't escape,
but we do all of our best to block it out, And so I think sometimes it can be beneficial to open that, box up and look at what the contents are and process it for yourself and then put it away back under the bed. Right. Don't do it all at once.
Yes.
Right.
I think this book is a good way for people to read a chapter, meditate on it, read another chapter, meditate on it. I've had people tell me, I loved the book and I wanted to get through it, but there was so much that I wanted to absorb from each chapter that I had to stop, take journal notes. I wrote things down. I talked to my friends about it. And then I continued on to the next chapter.
Yep.
And then you have the ones that are glutton for, they just want everything. And so they read it in a day. And then they're like, whoa, my head is blowing up. And I have to go back and read it again. But yeah, I mean, that was the whole idea. It was to write something that meant more to me than just my experiences. And I wanted it to help other people.
Which I think it does a fantastic job of. Yeah, I agree.
I thought that I was going to binge read your book, which is normally how I do things. There are a lot of, I've read plenty of paranormal books. I read a lot of novels, and I was one of the latter. I stopped and I journaled and I made tarot exercises for myself based on the contents of your book chapters, because there's so much in there. And you're right, it is something like death is always on our minds, and it is something that we like to we're aware of, and we want to stop it, and we also want to pretend like it's not a thing all at the same time. And you address it all so beautifully.
Thank you.
So many people are scared of death. You make it seem in such a way that people don't need to be scared. This is just a part of life. And there are so many beautiful things about death that you put into the book that I think are fantastic. And I think that's why it's so good for people who are mourning.
Yeah. I think, it's scary still, right? It's always going to be, it's a little unknown that sits in the back pocket of your mind. And when you're faced with something like, the loss of a loved one or any sort of scare or whatever, it's one of those things where you start to process what that means. For some people, it's too late to start the process. When you get to that point, it's like, it's like start thinking about it now in tiny, beautiful ways. And then when it gets, if it, like, God forbid, you lose a parent or a pet, even when you get to that, you've sort of laid the groundwork for the journey that is to come. Right. And I think that's very important for people to think about. Somebody asked me, I think back in July before the book came out, and they were like, you wrote this book and, are you scared of death? And it took me a second, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, it would be foolish of me not to be. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Foolish.
It's natural.
Foolish. Yeah. I'm more concerned for those that I would leave behind now, I guess. Then, because what I've learned from the afterlife is, there's a great line in Into the Woods where the witch says, when the baker's wife dies, and the witch goes, when you're dead, you're dead. And it's so cold, but it was almost like, and I don't mean that in the sense that there is nothing after. I just mean that that's the next door, like that's the step to the next journey, right? It's done. And I think a lot of people, especially those that don't stay behind, are on that journey. They're gone. This world is not for them anymore, and they've left. And, we grieve and mourn here. So I sort of think about, I'm more concerned with those, I guess, that are still living once it happens.
I don't know what happens to us after we die. I've talked to plenty of ghosts, and I'm always the first to say, I don't know what happens, and I'm okay with not knowing. I know some people stay. I know some people don't stay. But that tends to be what I think about the most, is the people that would potentially miss me. And you actually told a story. It was in one of the early chapters of your book about a friend who did manage to communicate after they had passed on. Have you had many experiences like that?
Well, my grandmother showed up to me in a dream visitation, which I talk about in a big chapter. And to me, that is the closest I've come to ever having a loved one or a friend speak to me and talk to me about what is in the afterlife. And when I talk about dream visitations, I'm not talking about a dream where you're the passenger. You're in a dream where you are the driver. There is absolutely no question in your mind that this is real, that it's happening, that you are in control completely. And those that have had those dreams know exactly what I'm talking about.
I've had one with my grandma too.
Yeah. And in those dreams, loved ones sometimes come back and they speak to you. And so much so where you can feel the texture of their skin. You can smell them. You are viscerally in a space with them, and you know that it is real. And so that, to me, that experience led me to believe that wherever my grandmother was, or wherever she was at the time, she was good. She was okay. And she had a job to do. I think she said to me, I make deliveries. And I was like, I don't know, what does that mean? And so after I woke up, I was sort of thinking like, like angels, delivers of messages, like the Greek anglos is messenger. Like, and that what was she doing? She was delivering a message to me. She came back to me at the time. And, but my friend Yvette, she had a similar experience where a friend of hers who passed away suddenly came back multiple times. And each time he returned, he looked better and better and better. And the first time he was with her, she was freaking out. And she was like, this isn't real. This can't be real. You're dead. Like, this is not good. And he goes, I'm going to come back and tell you something. You're not ready. And then he comes back and he tells her, to let you know that this is real, I need you to talk to your partner and tell them about a gig that we played. There were musicians, a gig that we played in Vermont. This specific thing happened. She woke up, told him. He's like, how do you know that? That makes no sense. And then we go on to learn that the next dream she has, he delivers a message about the way he passed on, said, please deliver it to my family. It was an accident. It was not on purpose. And all of these friends that were grieving around his death that Yvette knew, got that closure from that experience. And then he went on to also talk about, it's beautiful. He was like, but the afterlife is beautiful, but I don't have the words. There are no words in the English language to describe what it is. And I thought about that for a minute after she told me, and I was thinking about like, what are my thoughts on this whole experience? And I was like, of course he can't describe it. Of course he can't describe, I was getting angry about it. But then I was thinking, that's the way it should be. Because if we could describe it in full terms where everyone 1000% believed it existed, this life would no longer mean what it means to us. Right?
Right.
This journey that we're on, we would be like, the other journey. Somebody would capitalize off of it. Like there would be it would just be weird. And I think that's the point. The point is for us to process this journey and this experience so that in the next we have things to bounce off of and to push us forward. I do have a quick story to tell you that I tell a couple of times, but I have to tell you really quick because you mentioned the audiobook. So
go for it.
Get this. And for those of you who haven't read the book, this is a spoiler alert, but it's going to make the story so much more amazing. My friend Yvette told me that story in 2008 before I was a hobby. Ghosting was a hobby. And then I got on Ghost Hunters. I wanted to record the audiobook myself, and they gave me a bunch of different locations, but none were in Boston. And that's because I live on the Cape. And I said, Cape Cod. And I said, can I please do it somewhere in Boston? It's the summer. It would be so much easier if I could just drive there and drive back. They're like, yeah. So I recorded in a place in Arlington. And this is right outside of Boston. And it took me like 4 days to do 4 different days throughout the summer to do the audiobook. And then I worked with the same person, and we got to talking, and he was like, I went to Berkeley. And I was like, I went to Boston Conservatory. Berkeley and Boston Conservatory shared a cafeteria. Yvette went to Berkeley. This gentleman, her friend who passed away, also went to Berkeley. And we got to know each other. And we had the same sort of weird memories of the cafeteria. And it was such a great working relationship. When we got to the third day, he was like, I usually take the month of August off to be with my kids before they go back to school. So I have another engineer that's going to come in and finish it. He's great. And we had just finished the first part of chapter 11, which is the dream chapter. And I said, I really wish you would be here because chapter 11 is one of my favorite. And I started describing this story that my friend Yvette told, she went to Berkeley and blah, 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 blah. And I had changed this gentleman's name in the book to Patrick, just for the sake of his family and whatever. But I'm telling the story, and he looks at me and he goes, Peter? And I said, yes. And I paused because I'm like, Peter, he says. And I'm like, yes. And he goes, Peter was my best friend.
Oh,
and I paused because at this point I'm like, okay. And he goes, everything that you're telling me, there was circumstances around his death we didn't know. I was like, and yes, it snowed on his wake, and we were all there. And I was like, did you know Yvette? And he goes, no, that we were in different circles. So didn't know Yvette, but this friend knew these two circles of friends. They were all there. They all experienced. He goes, he was supposed to play my wedding 2 weeks after he died. And he died 2 weeks before I got married. And I'm standing there looking at him, and I am not sweating, but floored by the universe's gift and connection. Out of the thousands of people I could have recorded this book with, I'm sitting in the studio of someone whose best friend came back in a dream to another friend of mine, told her everything that she needed to know. She then in turn told me, she told all of her friends, and I put it in book form. This guy, his job is to record audiobooks. There is zero chance he would have picked up this book.
What?
There is zero chance.
I have full body chills right now.
There is zero chance he would have grabbed this book off the shelf and been like, let me read this ghost book. He's not into it, right? He's there to do a job. And all of a sudden, I am telling this story about his best friend who died 2 weeks before his wedding. And there was all this uncertainty about his death, and they were confused and they didn't know. And this gentleman who passed away made it a point to make sure that every single one of his friends found out. So not only did Yvette know and tell all of those friends, but I put it into a book form in which he went home immediately, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to finish this audiobook with you. He finished the whole book with me. He went home immediately, read that chapter. I'm sure he told all of those other set of friends about it.
So everyone knew.
This closure happens 18 years afterwards. So when you think about the universe setting up something from a catastrophe, like maybe he knew what my future was going to be. So he dropped a nugget for Yvette, and that's why Yvette was chosen. But maybe he also knew, no, this is the trajectory. I need you to tell him because this happens in 2023. Right?
Isn't that amazing?
That is so
amazing.
I have so many goosebumps. It's just the odds of all of those lining up are like, and the fact that it's not his real name and that his actual friend was sitting there like, are you talking about my best friend right now? And you're like, how did you know that? Because it's not his real name.
And I literally said, I said to him, I was like, I changed his name to Patrick because I didn't want to affect. And that's when he looked at me and goes, bloop, and he like says the name. And I was
But doesn't that just go to show that there is an afterlife, that this isn't the only place for us, and that the universe is at work putting all this together so that we can create these beautiful experiences? And I think that's just the most perfect story to tell about.
That's
all
the example. It blows my mind when I tell people that. It's hard to fully comprehend. It's hard to really fully comprehend the massiveness of that synchronicity. Right. That is paranormal. Yo. I mean, ghosts are one 100%. Thing. Supernatural and paranormal forms itself in many different ways. And that to me is like one of the weird, coolest, beautiful stories ever.
Did he know that was going to be your life path? Because like, if you think back on that time of your life, like, did you even think that you could end up here?
No, I mean, that wasn't the truth. I think what's interesting about with what I do now, I think what's interesting is like, I don't think I had a choice, right? I think I was at the right place at the right time and a hobby became a career. I also think like somebody knew something I didn't know. My entire life growing up to a certain point was like musical theater. I went to school for theater. I grew up in Alabama. I loved theater and I went to college for musical theater. So at some point, something big had to intervene that trajectory in order for me to even consider the other idea, and which was happened at Gettysburg. I mean, if that had not happened, I could have been a 6-time Tony winner. But you know what? It's fine.
You would have been.
Still can. Listen, still can.
Because I've heard you sing, Adam.
Thank you.
You and your husband, and you guys are amazing.
Well, the album. Wait, she's telling this.
I was just going to ask.
The album's coming. She's like, the album's coming. Yeah, I don't think I had the choice, and I think what's interesting at the time she told me that I was into the paranormal, and that's why she shared it with me. Right, like my friends would have spooky things happen in when they lived in New York or like in their apartment, and then we'd talk about it because it was fun to talk about. It was like an exciting thing to discuss.
Right.
And now, it still is exciting to discuss, but I've seen a lot of things in the past 15 years and I know a lot of things. And has it been 15 years? How long of it? How old am I? I don't know. A long time. And so it's like, I think there's more thought put into it, right? We're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
When you're so good at what you do and you're so empathetic, and I think that's why you get the result, you and Amy both get the results that you do on Kindred Spirits. And I have to say that I love that show so much because not only do you get the evidence and you collect all that, but you ask the questions, why are you here? And how can we help? Not just the living, but the dead. And so many paranormal shows on TV right now are just about getting the spooky and collecting the evidence, but there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, I think, there's an evolution that I talk about in the book where it's, you start at the excitement level. Like when you have an experience and it's paranormal in nature, it's so exciting and you want more of it. It's like this little drug, right? And you're like, oh, I want more experiences. I want more of this. Because it's so fascinating. But then when you start to realize what's on the other side of the activity, where you are humanizing the spirits, you are talking to a mother, a grandmother, a father, a sister, a brother, an aunt, someone who's passed away, who is just like us. And for some reason, they're in spirit form in our world, which is not made for them, right? This world is made for the living. And it may be very hard for them to communicate and to understand. And the only thing they can do is knock, right? But there's obviously something that they need behind it. I saw that glitch, your camera glitch.
I saw that too. Here? You're here. Yeah. Can you hear us?
I can't see it. I can hear you, but I can't see anything.
I can see you. We can see you, but your camera glitched. This is not the first time. This is not the first time this has happened when I do interviews about the book.
Anyway, I can't see you, but I can hear you. So
it's fine. We're here. We're not ghosts. We're still here.
I've never had this happen before.
The last time this happened when I was talking about the book, my audio went out, and I charge this stuff all day long. I'm prepared, honey. I come to work prepared, and so I'm like, when things go wrong, I tend to not think it's mechanical. It's a glitch because I do these all the time. And I'm like, no. Somebody's trying to say something.
My dog is like, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Oh yeah, we can see you and hear you.
The hair is standing up on the back of his head and he's like standing watch. Like,
if there's anyone in that room, knock over something.
Knock
over the license plate, ghost in the room.
Do you have any of your devices turned on, Melissa?
No, why don't I? Oh my gosh,
we usually have something running in the background.
At least a record. Well, you are recording audio, so if anybody's listening and captures EVPs in the background, write down the time code and put it in the comments.
Yes, yeah. I've been waiting for the day when we have an EVP on the episode.
Should I get out my equipment?
Yeah, get out something.
Yeah, turn your REM pod on.
Yeah, put a K2 on that back table on your, like, to the right of the Bigfoot foot, near the Bigfoot foot, and that way we can see it.
The Bigfoot foot.
The Bigfoot foot.
K2.
Yes. Yeah, great. Okay. Now put it right there. Oh, perfect. Is it on?
You see it? Yep.
Is it on?
Yep.
Great. If it lights up, we'll see it. Is it going to go off? Oh my God. We're all going to just be sitting looking at the...
I know. We'll have to... Oh, she's got her REM pod too. So that'll beep and that'll tell us for sure if it's...
The REM pod, or what I like to call the most annoying piece of equipment in paranormal.
It is. It really is.
It's so bad. And like when it trips and it doesn't go off.
I still can't see you guys.
Well, we can see you and you look completely relaxed, like nothing is wrong. You look like you have not seen a ghost. Was it going off?
Yeah. Yellow lights on.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Ooh, see, now we're ghosting.
I feel like it's your painting. I'm not going to lie. I've been staring at her. We've been making eye contact. I don't know who she is, but I love her.
What if I turn away? What if I turned away towards the painting and then the next time I turned back towards you, I was her?
That would be wild.
It would be so crazy.
Oh, now it's green. Now it's yellow.
Okay, wait. If there's anyone in the room with Dr. Melissa Morgan, can you please light up the REM pod that's behind her, that little black box with the red top? Make it go off so I can hear it.
I can't believe that I'm ghost hunting with Adam Berry.
It's not going to do it. Okay, well, listen, whoever's in there with Dr. Morgan, if you want to get our attention, okay, wait, your camera just glitched again, and then that thing in the back is like flashing. See it?
It is.
Yep.
And her camera glitched. Did you see it?
I did see it. Yeah.
That's the temperature drop.
There is 100% something happening.
That's wild.
Okay, I've had this on, by the way, Adam, for all of our interviews. I think most of them anyway, and we haven't had anything. So,
well, you know what I was doing though? I was talking, if you notice what I was talking about the humanization of spirits, right?
Yes.
We're not talking about like a ghost, like this on my shirt is a cartoon of a ghost, right? We're not talking about that. We are literally talking about someone who's passed away. I don't know if she's dead. Forgive me if she's not. But we're not talking about just an imaginary friend. We're talking about someone who lived like you and I, and they're on the other side. It's hard for them to communicate. And our evolution from having experiences, which is what we're doing now. We're having experiences, right? You're having an experience right now. Is changed from that to why is the experience happening? And what is it that they need or want? Because that 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. There are the few spirits who hang around who are like looking after their legacy, right? But in a sense, they want something too. They want to make sure that their legacy is intact. They want to make sure their hotel is running properly, right? But there are other people that are more desperate, like they need to get a message out, or they're like on Kindred, their tombstone, their headstone is wrong, misspelled, and it's not where it should be. Or there's mold in the attic, and the lady who died from the mold, from the lung complications from mold in the house, wants to warn the family about it, right? Those things happen, but it's all out of a need or a want. And once you start doing that, ghosts don't become that Hollywood scary anymore. You know, people are always like, you went to, oh, it's going off. It's agreeing with me.
It is agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
You even have beeps. Oh, I'm thrilled.
If it's annoying, I'll turn it off. But
I mean, let's 2 seconds. Let's doctor. Why don't you ask a question, since we're humanizing ghosts? Like, do you have could it be anything connected to your house or to the objects behind you or to someone in your life?
I do have a couple of people who have passed on.
I mean, I feel like maybe ask a couple and see if we get any responses. Then if nothing happens, we can turn it off.
Okay. All right. Can you quiet that for just a moment and I'll ask a question?
Did it stop?
Okay, there we go. Is this Brandon? If they're Brandon, could you please light up the black box with the red light on top?
The camera glitched.
Camera glitched again.
Yeah,
it did. Yep.
I still can't see you guys.
It's okay, but I take that as like potential evidence because it's manipulating electronics, which is what it's doing with that thing behind you.
Yeah.
Is this? Oh, I was
Who
just
going to say
ask if this was my dad.
Okay, so sometimes when we're investigating, you've already thought of the question in your head, and you're about to speak it out loud. But before you can speak out loud, it answers because it's already heard what you were going to ask. Again, they live in an environment that is not, they potentially can manipulate and know what you're energetically putting out there.
True.
Could be your father. Gosh. I mean, I would say the actual equipment going off and you thinking about saying it, I'm not saying it is your father, but like I would lean, and if I were investigating with you right now, like all night, I would lean in that direction and see if you got more activity, because you're specifically asking for them to manipulate something in the space with you rather than it being a camera glitch, if that makes sense. Right?
Sure. Yep.
Camera glitch can maybe be explained, but like that thing behind you that's never gone off is going off, especially when you talk about your dad. So,
there we go. We're talking about my dad.
Very active.
That's crazy. Adam, you were talking about humanizing spirits, and you talk a lot about that in your book. Can you go into that a little bit more in more detail, maybe? Sure.
How are you feeling, Melissa? Are you freaking out?
No, I'm not freaking out, but I can't see you guys. And so I'm like, I don't know where to look.
Okay, you're fine. You're doing perfectly fine.
It's weird because this is the second time that we've done an interview. We interviewed a psychic medium, and she actually was able to channel my dad. And I've never, ever been able to channel him before. But I've always had so many questions around.
What was his name?
Wayne.
Wayne, you're in luck. I don't channel. So if you're thinking this is one of those moments, it won't happen, but I appreciate you. And if you want us, I'd love to continue this interview maybe, and then Melissa can talk to you later if that's okay. Is that okay?
That sounds like a great idea.
Because unfortunately, my psychic powers aren't that strong. I do have a few things, but not like that. So I appreciate it. I think what's interesting though, let's think of it this way. Like, obviously I don't know if it's your dad, but let's think of, you said humanizing the ghost. Let's think about that for a second. Like, I don't know if it is your father. How awesome and wonderful would it be if it were true? Like, if that is true, like your dad has just come to pop in for a minute because he hears what we're discussing. And for some reason, he's drawn to the conversation, and he's like, I agree with that. Like, yes, I mean, it gives me the idea, like, he seems to be somebody who, oh, now we're losing Carly.
No way.
Yeah. She is on a death wheel. Like, it's just spinning. Oh. Yo!
This is so crazy.
Happening right now.
My mouse isn't even working. I can't even.
I would restart just because we have time. Like, just, you know.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Adam?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not
okay. I'll be right back.
We've angered the spirits.
Melissa, I would say turn off the REM pod. Can you see us now?
Yeah.
Turn it off, because here's the thing. If your dad is there, or whoever it might be, have a one-on-one conversation and just be like, hey, if you're here, just acknowledgement, right? And saying, I'd love to know what you need. So if you give me a sign at some point about what you need or what you want, that would be great. I'm not a big fan of investigating my own space, because then I feel like it gives them permission to continue to reach out, you know? So it's sure. Good to set boundaries, just like with speaking of humanizing spirits. Like, when people have a haunting in their house, the best way that I say for people to sort of take control of that is to literally set boundaries as if they were house guests. You know, you don't allow people who visit your house to like bang on your wall in the middle of the night, right? So why would you take that? Like, it would be like, listen, you can be here, like I always say, or not, like whatever you want to say. But I was like, listen, it's okay for you to be here, but when my family's here, I don't want to see you or hear you. If I'm here alone, sure, interact with me. Now, if there's anybody in this house right now, I'm not talking to you. I'm just saying an example, because I don't like to bring my work home, if that makes sense. So I say do that, Melissa. Like, once we're done, have a one-on-one, heart-to-heart, you know? And maybe there is something that's been weighing on you that he knows and he just want to talk about. Like, I don't know. That's an idea.
There actually is. I've been really struggling with something.
Well, not saying I'm psychic, but...
Well, one of our other guests that we had on the show, her name is Courtney. She runs an account called The Ghoul Guide. Wonderful person.
Oh, Courtney. Yeah, I know Courtney.
She's fantastic. But we had her on and we had a wonderful conversation. She was so much fun. But she also referenced an episode of Kindred Spirits where y'all were talking about an egregore. I was wondering if we are humanizing spirits and if we are potentially creating egregores. Can you tell the difference?
Yeah. So an egregore or a tulpa is something that theoretically is created by our own manifestation and energy. There's a thing called the Philip experiment. It was done in the 70s. If you want to Google that, that's the best way to describe what an egregore is.
Carly just did a whole episode on that.
Right. So you know what I'm talking about. So the thing is, the most famous case on Kindred Spirits is at the Oliver House. It was the Zombie Boy episode. Now, the thing about that, we walked into that space knowing the historic nature of that house, right? We know that it was connected to the Revolutionary War. I actually just investigated there like 3 weekends ago. And I focused specifically just on the Revolutionary War and the people that were there. Got an incredible EVP because they were Tories. Basically, they wanted what's the word I'm looking for? They wanted the king to still be the king. They didn't want the revolution to happen, right?
They were loyalists.
That's right. And so I got a great EVP where I was like, finish this phrase, God save the, and it says king, right?
Oh,
it was like right there, right? But the thing is, when we showed up, we had one expectation, but it flipped because Christy, who was leading us through the house, she started talking about how in a certain room upstairs, they see a ghost, a photo of a child, or they take pictures in this mirror and they see a child, and we call him Zombie Boy. And they've been doing that for a few months. I don't know how long, actually. I mean, I feel like it was a few months at least. And the thing is, the pictures that people were taking in the in the mirror weren't actually pictures of a ghost, right? 9 times out of 10, I'd say 9.9 times out of 10, a photograph is not a ghost. It's not paranormal. I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 out of thousands in my entire career. And so when you take it, the mirror's warped. Your brain is trying to make sense of it. It's called pareidolia. It's like making shapes out of clouds. and they're saying, oh, I got the zombie boy, 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 right? And so you have all these people going into this house, this specific room, really throwing their manifestation out that there's this kid here, his name is Zombie Boy, and his face is deformed. Well, we started investigating, and I was sitting at the mirror, and Amy was doing the Estes method. She was listening to the spirit box, blindfolded, asking questions, and she was in the bathroom where Christy had created a scrying mirror through a red light, and she was sort of saying what she heard. And the conversation that I was having was very much, it seemed like this entity or this spirit, this whatever, didn't really know what it was. It couldn't tell me specifics about their life, but was like, I was invited here. It was very weird and specific. And our first thought wasn't, Agrigor, Tulpa, but I was like, oh, but what if though? Like, what if this is this kind of thing? And so what we did is we spent a really long time giving this Tulpa attributes. So we made up an entire thing about him. We gave him a place where he could live. We talked about his life, how he died, how his father died, where he was buried, who his mother was, sister, brother, like all of these people. And we would sit across from each other in this room, and we would just talk. And I would say to Anne, like, oh yeah, and he passed away. He fell off a horse and hit his head and he died. And she goes, yeah, and his dad died in the Civil War, and they threw a huge parade for him. And I was like, yeah, and he's buried next to his mother, her name was, and his sister, his name was, and his father, his name was, right? So we do this for a very, very long time, and then we leave it. We exit. The weird thing about this is when we were investigating the carriage house the next day, Chip, who was remote reading from his house in Atlanta, Georgia, we're in Massachusetts. He is in Atlanta, Georgia. He says something to us on the phone because we were like in a space, and we were like, can you just get a vibe of the space? And he kept saying, he was like, the Civil War. I don't get it. There's something about the Civil War. And I was like,
holy heck.
What? Okay. So then we were like, oh, no, this is weird. Like, why would he say that? That makes no sense. There's no Civil War here. It's Revolutionary War. So we go back upstairs and we start getting EVPs where this entity is answering questions. The answers that he is telling us matches exactly what we were giving it, right? What's interesting is I went back there and they don't talk about it anymore, which is exactly what we asked them not to do. Like, you should just let it go and focus on the history of the space. And it'll eventually dissipate. Now, I just investigated there. I didn't see no Zombie Boy. I don't have any EVPs that gave me to believe that Zombie Boy is still there, because once you take the power and the intention and manifestation away from it, we believe theoretically that it dissipates and goes away. But what did come through for me was people that lived during the Revolutionary War who lived in that house. So how do you know the difference between, am I talking to a made up ghost through energy and manifestation, or am I talking to somebody who was once living like us? The best way that I know how to tackle that is research, right? We research and historically check everything about a property. We pull deeds, land surveys. I mean, we are doing the work, because when factual information matches up to paranormal activity and they collide, then the odds of it being real and true, it heightens it, right? You have factual information, you have names, you have all this stuff. We're pulling up information that people might have not talked about or known about for a very, very long time. So no one's sitting in that house talking about Jacob Marley, who lived in like 1750, who owned this property and this land. But we're talking about it. Right. So the odds of an Agrigor knowing that information is none, right? Because no one is talking about it. No one's manifesting and using that information. So once we start asking questions, factual information that nobody has known, and the spirits are giving us the answers based on the factual information I have in my hand, we're like, odds are it's a spirit, right? And you can tell. Though there was an Agrigor we encountered at Belvoir Winery, and it kept saying his name was, he goes, my name's Robert. Chip asked him what his name was, Chip Coffee, and he goes, Robert. And Chip was like, that's my name. That's not your name. It didn't know what its name was. It didn't know what its purpose was. And so it kept trying to feed off of our fears. Like, it kept doing things to us because it knew what scared us, like disembodied voice in Amy's ear. Amy and I separated, and our walkies wouldn't work. And like, one thing is I love to be in contact with each other. Like, and it sort of like took that away from us, but it couldn't do anything else. It played with our fears, because if we said our fear out loud, it was like, boop, I got that. I'm going to use it against you. Right. So John Tenney was on that case, and John like cleared his head. He was like blank slating his mind and tried to be as neutral as possible, and nothing weird happened to him. Like Chip's, one of Chip's big things is like, he really, demonic entities or things that are really aggressive, that are non-living. It's a thorn in anybody's side, but he doesn't like it, right? If he gets that kind of vibe, he's like, no, right? But he had talked about that. And so it started presenting itself like that. That's the most basic explanation of something like that. And again, it's all theory, right? But theory and practice, when you talk about the Philip experiment, it was theory and practice, and it worked. And then at the Oliver House, that was insane to me. I've never seen anything like it. It's something I will never, ever forget. And it's something that I think about all the time when I go and investigate. I have to be like, litmus test this ghost. It's like, okay, well, what am I dealing with? Tell me your name. I'm not going to give you a name. What is it? And if it's like, I don't know, then you're like, why don't you know? Why don't you know your name?
Did enough people wander in here and say, this place must be haunted, that then something...
Right,
exactly. That's the other thing. It's like, if you go into, and you're like, oh, this place is so creepy. It's so haunted. It's so haunted. It's so haunted. Well, guess what? It's going to be haunted, right? It's going to be haunted.
Surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
You did a whole chapter on near-death experiences, and that's what I did my thesis on. And so it really fascinates me. And most people who talk about their near-death experiences, have that light in the tunnel, and they go through the tunnel and all this. But John had a totally different experience. And there are a few other people that I've interviewed that have had the same sort of experience. Do you think that we have control over what that is?
I'm hesitant to say what I 100% believe, because what if what I believe now is not what I believe in 20 years, and I've set in motion this scenario, right? What I'd like to point out, though, in that scenario and in that story, John really didn't believe in anything. He sort of was his own person and his own thing, and that's totally fine. But when he had his near-death experience, and he was in that space of nothingness, where he existed before he existed now, he will always exist, where he's existing with everything. The one thing point that sticks out to me is the loneliness that he was feeling. He wanted to scream out to other people so other people could hear him, because he didn't want to be alone. Right. And I think for him, deep down, even as a teenager, he didn't want to be alone. Right. He was a loner. We all know those kids, and I was one at one point, and
I was too.
But then you're like, but what happens if this becomes your forever? And I think it is a beautiful idea that as a living person in this journey, that we cultivate our dream of what will be, and we hold on to what we want it to be. And it gives us faith that there is something else, even if you don't believe in ghosts, that you will see your family, that you will experience it. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to daydream that, let's think of it that way, right? Instead of being told what the afterlife is, let it be what we want it to be based on our own human experience and our own journey. And I know, and don't get me wrong, like people that are listening who are Christian or Catholic or Hindu or Buddhist, like everyone has their own ideas and views based on religion of what the afterlife is. And you've been told that this is the way it is based on scripture and text. And if that is what you believe, that is absolutely fine. Like, you can believe that there will be a beautiful paradise and all of your friends will be there. Like, that sounds amazing. Right.
Right. Exactly.
But then again, who knows? I mean, it's weird. I mean, my brain, I'm spiraling. I'm ADD spiraling now, but it's like my brain goes to like, we are the speck of the universe. We are so small. We are I can't even put into words. Again, I cannot describe. I can't put into words what we are in this universe that we live in. What if we are Horton Hears the Who, and we're a speck on a piece of dust on a fluff that this elephant's walking around? It's like, who knows? Who knows, right? It's so beyond comprehension that I wrote a book about it. So I feel so that we all can be like completely immersed in self-thought and exploration. And I do think, by the way, I think I don't want anyone at home to be like, oh no, I think the afterlife is this, I'm now stuck. please. Please. I feel like we can change our mind about what we want for dinner. We can change our mind about how we want the afterlife based on our experiences.
Yeah, do we want hamburger helper or not?
Yeah.
Always, yes.
I'm going to prefer like open bar, no hangover, all my friends. You know what I'm saying? All my friends.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to like ride some rides. But go to Disney. Like I want to be able to free float, but who knows? I don't know.
And all the dogs in the world I get to have in my possession.
All of them. And when they poop, it immediately disappears.
And no scent.
Listen, when we eat a lot, do we gain a lot of weight, or do we just like say no? I don't think so.
We
no.
can eat whatever we want.
That's what I think.
We can drink whatever we want.
It's funny when we investigate and people like leave offerings of booze and they like open the booze up and they put it on the table. I'm like, that is such a tease. Take that booze and pour it on the ground or pour it in a cup so that they can really smell it. Because if you think about it, scents are used in all kinds of religious practices, right? So the idea is that the spirits can smell these things. So light that cigarette and let it blow for them. Open that bottle and pour it out a little bit so they can smell it, right? They might not be able to eat it, but take in those vapors. So I say, go for it, kids.
Before we let you go, do you have any advice for maybe any of our listeners who want to get involved in the paranormal and don't know where to start?
It's a hobby. Don't quit your day job. Let it just be a hobby because you know what I'm saying? Like have fun with it. Find like-minded people, even if it's online, to create your own little community where you can talk about ghosts and the paranormal without being looked at like with a side eye. It's getting better. I think read books. Don't believe everything that you see on television. I mean, our show to me is the most straight up as you're going to get in my opinion.
I agree.
So please watch Kindred Spirits. But even then, like, we're showing you the highlights. We're showing you the biggest things that have happened. There's so many other things that happen. So get out in the world and go to spooky places. If you're not embracing the ghosts, embrace the history of the space. If ghosts get you into the venue and you're like, cool ghost, but like really take in where you're standing and what the history is. I think that's part of how amazing this could be, like ghost hunting in general and like what it should be.
Is there anything we haven't touched on that you want to talk about?
But everyone, please go get the book.
You won't be disappointed if you get the book.
If you are,
you won't be.
If you are though, burn it and post about it and say that it's like from the devil, so that all people start burning the book and buying it and burning it. Just, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you hate it, really start a ruckus. Really go in on me.
That's a whole media strategy.
Just go in hardcore. What I want people to take away is like the book. It's a community. I created a thing on Facebook called Goodbye Hello, a community. It's a private group. So if you've read the book or if you are going to read the book and you want to join that community, you can. And it's full of people who are discussing topics in the book related to their lives. Some believe in ghosts, some don't, but they're all finding this kindred spirit in the ideas that are in the book, whether it's near-death experiences or end of life or what ghosts are, how they communicate or why they're here, or dream visitations. There's something for everyone. When I was talking to my publisher about this right before it came out, and I was like, we're going to have to do another one of these in like 10 years. And she was like, what? And I was like, well, because what I think now, this is in this book. Sure. And then 10 years from now, 15 years from now, those ideas will change and evolve based on my experiences.
That's what paranormal research is. Yeah.
Right. We may have to go back in and sort of like tweak something. So for the now and for the next, let's say 20 years, I think this is a great stepping stone to better understanding our own journey on this earth and what might be next.
I love that.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. That was fun.
If you loved what you heard today, please consider leaving us a review. Death Becomes Us is an Emotional Pictures production produced by Sarah Nichols and Alex Eisenstein.